Hi there, I'm Lori and this is Craig, and we're a local duo called Bluebird Telegraph. We have a brand new song to play today called Never Let Go, and it was co-written with Nancy LaBerge and Bill Irwin with the Songsmiths group. You grew up mountain high. Now you're getting high, and that's your way of getting by. See your world grow dark while the stars shine bright. I see a lonesome man on a porch, a bird a night. You're falling, you're spinning, you're slowly losing control. But I'm strong as a rock here beside you. You're not alone. Never let go. Never let go. The love you're giving makes life worth living. You gotta be willing to never let go. Never let go. Keep holding on and hanging in. Never let go. In a crowded bar, through a haze of smoke, I see you laughing with your friends at one of your jokes. You party so hard, so full of life, but you never know when to quit, and it leaves you scarred. You're falling, you're spinning, you're slowly losing control. But I'm strong as a rock here beside you. You're not alone. Never let go. Never let go. Life you're giving is love worth living. You gotta keep willing to never let go. Never let go. Keep hanging in and holding on, and never let go. Never let go. Never let go. The love you're giving makes life worth living. You gotta be willing to never let go. Oh, never let go. Holding on and hanging in.
Good morning, and welcome to the home of the Calgary Unitarians. Whoever you are, whomever you love, wherever you are on your journey of faith or search for meaning, welcome. If you're visiting for the first time or the first time in a long time, know that we are grateful to have you with us. We come together in beloved community to grow in wisdom, welcome and deepen relationships, and act for a just and sustainable world. Wherever we're located, we recognize our responsibility to be stewards of the land we're on and acknowledge that we do this with those for whom it is their traditional territory. Here in Mohkinstsis, now known as Calgary, we acknowledge our Treaty 7 relationship, entered into on September 22nd, 1877, with the people of the Blackfoot Confederacy, comprising the Siksika, the Piikani, and the Kainai First Nations, the Tsuut'ina First Nation, and the Stoney Nakoda, including the Chiniki, Bearspaw, and Wesley First Nations. Mohkinstsis, Calgary, is also home to Métis Nation of Alberta, Region 3. In offering a land acknowledgement, we honor those who have long been the stewards of the land, and we accept our shared responsibility for being good caretakers. We acknowledge that treaties were entered into as a collaboration between settlers and the Indigenous people, making all of us treaty people. My name is Pam Rickey, and I use the pronouns she and her, and I have the privilege of serving on the Board of Trustees. This congregation is special to me in many ways, and today, especially for the variety of the spiritual pathways that we travel in our worship together. Please join us after the service for a virtual coffee hour where we meet in small breakout rooms and get a chance to socialize. And now we'll go to Deborah for lighting the chalice.
When we gather, we create a sacred space. We make it tangible with our intention and by our lighting of the chalice. A chalice lit in our midst holds the warmth we offer each other, sheds its light to brighten the lives of those in its circle and beyond. It is a beacon of love and justice. Its tiny flame representing the pure light that shines within each person, brought together for this hour. Holding this intention, I light our chalice flame. This morning, we celebrate National Poetry Month. Poetry, such an important aspect of human communication and creativity. During this pandemic time, its art form has flourished. Perhaps you have even found yourself writing more, finding solace in words on the page. As most of you know, I will be retiring in May after 11 years with this amazing congregation. And as you might expect, these last few months, I've been reflecting on my time here. One of the highlights for sure has been co-crafting Sunday morning worship services. There is a spark of creativity that is fanned into flame with the sharing of insights and ideas. One of the people with whom our sparks have ignited is poet and storyteller Kathy Welburn, known as Cassie in her professional storytelling circles. She has inspired me in so many ways, and it is through her that I, perhaps we, have come to know and celebrate Poetry Month. The first time we did this was in 2014. I'm so delighted to share this service again with her. as we reflect on our Calgary Unitarian theme of the month, Liberation, and the National Poetry's theme of resistance, there was a synthesis. And then Kathy suggested, as she often does, that other voices be added. So this morning we offer mostly original poetry from across the generations. So I wish to thank the poets who are with us this morning, Lori-Ann and her partner Craig, who offered a piece of her poetry put to music as our prelude. You'll hear more from her later. Ruby, one of our youth, will share one of her favorites. And Carl has a trio to share, and of course, Kathy. Our Sunday service is indeed a collaboration. And this morning, I thank Mitch and Daria, our AV team, and Bob for editing and posting to YouTube. For those unable to be here this morning, or for those who are just so inspired you want to listen to it again. Thank you to Kelsey, who is our virtual coffee host this morning, and Pam from our Board of Trustees. Sheila, our Children and Youth Program staff person, who may just have some poems from children to offer in a bit. And of course, our music director, Jane Perry, who brings poetry put to music alive for us all. Jane?
Good morning, friends. Most of our songs and poems this morning are on themes of beauty and resilience, and this first song that we'll sing together is no exception. Let's sing together for the beauty of the earth.
Source of all joy, thee we raise this our hymn of grateful praise. For the joy of ear and eye, for the heart and mind's delight, for the mystic harmony, linking sense to sound and sight. Source of all to thee we raise this our hymn of grateful praise. For the wonder of each hour of the day and of the night, hill and vale and tree and flower, sun and moon and stars of light. Source of all to thee we raise this our hymn of grateful praise. For the joy of human care, sister, brother, parent, child, for the kinship we all share, for all gentle thoughts and mild. Source of all to thee we raise this our hymn of grateful praise.
Good morning, everyone. It is so lovely to see you all on this wonderful spring day. And as Reverend Deborah mentioned, it is all about poetry. And so today the elementary crew are experimenting with making their own poetry, as well as listening to poems that make a difference. And the youth will be exploring poems of protest and resistance and empowerment, and why poetry is necessary during times of crisis. And in this week's Children and Youth Religious Education newsletter, CYRE newsletter, if you get it, it's an awesome thing to be reading every week. We have 3 poetry activities to try out: the paper bag poetry, paint chip poetry, and how to compose an acrostic. And if you want to know what is an acrostic, check out our newsletter. And if you don't get it, just email me, Sheila@calgaryunitarians.ca. And this week, I'm thinking about our Easter basket from last week. So if you didn't have a chance to enter our draw and guess how many eggs were in the service, and it's not just in the slides, there are a couple hidden in the background, you still have a chance to enter. Last week's service is on YouTube. So watch it, count the eggs, and send me your guesses, again, at sheila@calgaryunitarians.ca, and I'll enter your name into our draw for our Super Spring Basket, which we will be drawing for next week. And now, in line with poems, I've been reading poems from Unitarian children who attended the 2009 Peace Camp. And my favorite poem, written by Amelie, is called My Spot. Wings, low gray bench, starts to rain. With green and red bushes branched out in front of 100-year-old school, very peaceful and quiet, the light stands out in this very spot in the sun. And now to Ruby Godet reading her favorite poem, Jabberwocky.
'Twas brillig, and the slithy toves did gyre and gimble in the wave. All mimsy were the borogoves, and the mome rats outgrabe. Beware the Jabberwock, my son, the jaws that bite, the claws that catch. Beware the Jubjub bird, and shun the frumious Bandersnatch. He took his vorpal sword in hand, long time the Mang's own foe he sought. So rested he by the Tumtum tree, and stood awhile in thought. And as in uffish thought he stood, the Jabberwock with eyes of flame came whiffling through the tulgey wood, and burbled as it came. 1, 2, 1, 2, and through the vorpal blade went snicker-snack. He left it dead, and with its head he went galumphing back. And hast thou slain the Jabberwock? Come to my arms, my beamish boy. O frabjous day, callooh, callay, he chortled in his joy. 'Twas brillig, and the slithy toves did gyre and gimble in the wabe. All mimsy were the borogoves, and the mome rats outgrabe.
Well, that was fun. It's good to be with you today, to be together in that virtual way, longing for together play, and that this virus might go away. A little extra poetry. For now, let us center ourselves. Let us take a moment for grounding ourselves, a time of silence, and a musical response from Jane. To take us into the silence, I offer these words, one of my few poems that has gone to print. I title this is How the Spirit Dresses Up. In the bird's song, in a baby's cry, in laughter among friends, the sobs and wails of loss, I hear you. In a sunset, a glacial peak, the unimaginable color of flowers, waterfalls and rainbows, the ocean's crash, and starlit nights, I see you. Comfort given another in pain, joy holding a wanted newborn, peace in a circle of friends, fulfillment in working for justice. I feel you. When the bones ache, weary with more to do, then the calm comes. When witnessing the power of presence and humility comes. When despair and longing grip the soul and release comes. When joy in loving seems too big to hold and serenity comes. I know you, am of you. We are one. At the foundation of our faith is the recognition that we are bound together in the great web of life, that we are one. Giving substance to that awareness, we turn to honor the joys and celebrations, the sorrows and concerns that we share, knowing that in so many ways, so many sacred ways, what touches the life of one of us affects us all. On our beautiful blue-green planet, there are countless causes for concerns, situations that touch our heart and call for our compassion. This morning, we hold in our hearts all those who now live or continue to live in turmoil. All those whose lives are beset by fear of what the future may hold. Those who are displaced and those who are worried for their own well-being and for the well-being of those they love. We carry with us today many personal concerns. We hold in love and care this day all those contending with illness and those healing from pain, be it spiritual, physical, or emotional. We continue to hold those members of our community currently hospitalized with gentle, healing energy. We think of those struggling with the hard and heartbreaking stuff of life. Those with job loss or financial insecurity, insecurity of housing and food. We hold all of these. Thinking of those we may be carrying in our hearts, let us now lift them up in silence or speak them aloud. And if you choose, I invite you also to post their names in the chat for others to know and add their consoling energy as well. I light our candle of sorrow and concern. We do carry much sorrow and anxiety these days, and yet there is also joy, for such is life. There are causes for celebration and gratitude, and milestones of all kinds. There is a feeling of spring, almost, in the air. There are some here today joining us for the first time, and it is a joy to welcome you. There have been grandbaby gender reveals, new homes found, and moves on the horizon. Moves which may be a mix of joy and sorrow, at least reminiscence of the space we've been in. We celebrate so many who have chosen to and have received vaccines. What other joys do we have to share today? As I light our candle of joy and celebration, let us lift up now by speaking them aloud or in the silence of your hearts, in your own space, or by posting them in the chat for others to add their good wishes. With this, I light our candle of joy and celebration. There are so many global concerns. For those on the island of St. Vincent with volcanic activity, violent conflict in Northern Ireland and continuing in other places, Myanmar and Syria, to name a few. Tuesday begins the month of Ramadan for our Muslim cousins. And holding all this in celebration of Poetry Month, I light our global candle, and I invite you to speak aloud or write in the chat those global issues which you wish to send light. I light our global candle. And now I would like to invite my co-conspirator for this morning, Kathy, to share more about National Poetry Month and introduce our guest poet. Kathy?
Thank you, Deborah. And thank you for the wonderful opportunity of doing this with you over the years. It's meant a lot. They say that April is the cruelest month, but it's also National Poetry Month, brought to you by the League of Canadian Poets, one of member who is Laurie Ann Furr. And it's my pleasure to introduce you to this multimodal poet who does so much here in Calgary for poetry by teaching, doing open mics, and being involved in so many projects, which she may share with you now, some of those projects, especially the ones she's been invited to take part of over the COVID 2020. Laurie Ann Furr, thank you.
Thank you, Cassie. So blessed to be here with you all today and to share some poems. Lots going on in Calgary for poetry. One of the things that I'm involved with that I believe in very much is the Alexandra Writer Center Society. Everything's online now. So anybody that has interested in learning more about poetry, maybe writing some poetry with us, feel free to check that out. And thank you so much, Cassie. Cassie's a wonderful poet, and Carl as well. So it's great to be here. Okay. One of the things I've been doing sometimes are poems on demand, and I learned a method from the League of Canadian Poets where I do a short interview with somebody, get some information from them, try to pull the specific out of the vague answers, and then write them a poem. This is a poem called Days of Quarantine and Fineness, and it's going to be part of the Poet Laureate Natalie Meisner's This Might Help audio project. It is for my friend Kelly Timleck's mom, Jill Melody. Days of Quarantine and Fineness. It doesn't matter if you're knotting macrame, experimenting with new flavors for your soda stream, raspberry and lime, ooh, baking sourdough or leaving that to newbies while you dig your hands in tough, dark pumpernickel dough, stitching a needlepoint of a schnauzer in a polka dot bow tie, placing diamond stars in a velvet sky with tweezers, painting a white-tailed deer by number, just a little outside the lines, or identifying the birds of Alberta, fine dining at your impressive collection of feeders. Or if all your home activities blur into one vague, lovely, indelible impression. There are many fine things all through the day, many love songs to sing, a wonderful husband to laugh with, so many reasons to be happy, to not lose hope. That includes some of Jill Melody's words from our interview together. This next poem was part of a pandemic project as well. There was a cross-cultural French and English postcard project that Miranda Krogstad, a local poet, helped bring to us here in Calgary. And with the liberation theme, it deals with a liberation from suicidal ideation through the poetic insight that you can welcome heaven's holy beauty and yet choose to live. It's called She Welcomes Heaven. Handful of dove feathers on a half-drowned veil, adrift in numbness, water, air, and skin, the same bitter chemical. Arms taste weightless freedom, tongue swims in place, finless fish in an underwater mouth. Mute scene this solitary buoyancy. Actor and audience, true one-woman show. Clouds of you skim by when she welcomes heaven. Steps into sky, double blue of prayer and answer, agony and serenity. Riverbed a choiceless channel, sure direction, clay casket, timeless demise. For now, she is within the current and above it, insoluble, inside loneliness and outside shame, suspended from a beam on high. Ophelia undecided, too light to sink, too heavy to float away. By all and any means, believe me, by all that is sacred, by all dearness of life, you can welcome heaven's holy beauty and yet choose to live. And this final poem is a poem that I wrote for my paternal grandfather upon his passing, a reflection on his life. And I felt that he had kind of a liberation from the need for words because he communicated in other ways. So this is called The Man of Words, and it's in my book. If I can be so cheeky as to plug it, from Frontenac House in 2018, called Night Flying. The Man of Words. The man of words can tell you the slight ways clouds change rolling over Saskatoon. Bloom out in branches above tree lines, up like castles over the Bessborough. The man of words has news about stock markets, who's in parliament, hockey scores, lotto numbers, the royal family. The man of words gives you too much info. Hears birds when he talks, greets them over and over, sings vowels, crowds the air with his sounds. But the man of few words speaks with the curve of his shoulders and the straight of his posture, listens with the shadows in his ears, holds honesty in his hands' curve, their placement on the dinner table. The small smile on his lips says all you need to know. Thanks very much, and happy Poetry Month, everyone.
Thank you, Lorianne, for your singing and for your poetry. Your words are solace for the soul. You've named for us shared challenges. The COVID depression eased. The power to recognize beauty, to ease our pain, and the recognition of communication beyond words. Deep, deep gratitude. You have offered what my colleague Angela Herrera speaks of with her words, how poets pray. She says, what do you do with the secret verses of your heart, with your need for redemption, the story without words, with paradoxical truths too private and nuanced to share that cannot be printed or spoken aloud? You weave their energy into a poem, carefully, carefully, over and under and through luminescent strands that cannot be unteased until the poem is shot through with light from an unknown origin, and you whisper it into the dark. Breeze formed, delivered into the deep. Thank you, Lorianne, for sharing the secret verses of your heart. For poetry, the words crafted invite us into a shared experience. It reminds us that while our lives are particular, we are also part of a greater whole. with common understandings, feelings, and experiences. This is why I think poetry from other cultures also find meaning, because they tap in to the shared human experience. Through poetry, feelings are expressed that might be difficult to express otherwise. Certainly, it is used for children when they are struggling to be able to put voice to what's going on inside. And perhaps this is one of the things about poetry. It brings the internal conversation out for others to hear. And metaphor that is found in poetry can speak the truth to power in ways that other orations cannot or are not safe to. Poets give voice to resistance, for sure. And we know that many of them have been silenced by the powers that would try and stop it. And yet the poetry lives on. Poets give voice to both liberation and resistance. And we each are poets within, while we may not all feel like we can express them for others to hear. And poetry is often also put into music. And so I invite us to join our own voices now in singing, O Liberating Rose. Jane?
O Liberating Rose has beautiful, beautiful words by the Reverend Mark Bellatini, who is a fine poet in his own right. This is one of these hymns that we don't sing often at our congregation, and yet it's a really beautiful one. So if it's new to you or you haven't sung it for a while, feel free to listen for the first couple of verses and then jump in when you feel comfortable to do so. Here it is.
Stem, your beauty helps all hearts, grows power to condemn. Your buds are tight with prophecy, your thorns are tougher poetry. You sign the whole and gift of life. Oh, liberating fire that calls for cleansing rage, whenever hurtful lies distort our present age. Your dancing dreams are liberty to challenge each indignity. You sign the whole and faith of life. O liberating song, whose echo now we sing, your lyrics swelling line rekindle strengthening. Your harmonies portray the time when seeds we sow shall bloom sublime. You sign the whole and hope of life. O liberating love, we hear you in our sigh. We glimpse you and we see our wet or weary eye. We touch you when our hands extend to soothe or to embrace a friend. You sign the whole and source of life.
I guess I'm here today as the representative of the older generation. The work I have to share today is centered on the house in Charleswood, where we've lived for the past 46 years. a house that we will soon be leaving for a condo and Varsity Acres. I grew up in a do-it-yourself family. My dad built a couple of the houses we lived in, so it was natural that I would take that approach to our new home, sometimes learning things the hard way. In 1981, we added on to our house. My dad came up from the US to help, and we spent the summer building it. Over time, I finished the basement, built a greenhouse and a garden shed, and took on whatever repairs and maintenance came along. But as I've gotten older and less energetic, I've gradually let go of a lot of that and left the hard stuff to others. I used to go up on the roof every fall and clean the fallen leaves out of the eaves troughs. As I got older and less steady, it seemed like less of a good idea. And this poem is probably about the last time that I did it. It's called Meditation While Clearing the Eaves Troughs. In this 40-year ritual, I slide along the roof edge, rake out the leaves with my hand. 74 and osteoporotic, the driveway looming 7 meters down. But this autumn day is bright, the shingles beneath me rough and warm, as the dead leaves crumble in my hand and fall fluttering to the ground. And a change of seasons now. Every year, usually in March, the snow and ice begin to melt from the streets. And I think we all feel the weight of winter lifting as we see water moving on the bare spots. And we get the urge to help things along by throwing piles of snow from the lawn or the driveway into the street and clearing the way for water to flow. And that's kind of what's behind the next poem here. It's called March Melt. I swing the rusty pick, chop street ice, trench along the curb and around my illegal ramp. We built the first ones maybe 30 years ago, a neighborhood project. Too cheap to pay for city curb cuts. We rented a mixer, drank some beer, and poured 5 in an afternoon. Bylaws be damned. And they served until the city took them out when they repaved the street. This one I did on my own. 13 sacks of premix shoveled from a wheelbarrow. It's showing some cracks now, but I think it will last long enough. Water follows the trench in a thin, muddy stream, and another winter trickles away. And there was a deck attached to the back of the house when we bought it. It was not that well built, and it got more rickety as time went on. So I finally tore it down and paid the neighborhood boys to haul it away. And then we built a new one. This poem is called The Deck. The flower boxes on the deck are newly planted with geraniums and alyssium. Boxes designed in when I replaced the old deck in 1991. Dad was visiting that summer and helped me build it. He was 77 then and limited by arthritic hands, but he could still help with cutting and handling the planks and with the wisdom of a lifelong do-it-yourselfer, not yet diminished by dementia. We built it solid, the way he always had. Finished a framework of spruce joists set on concrete pilings and bolted to the foundation. Finished with 2x6 hardwood cedar and everything square, plumb, and level. His mark and presence in the bones of it. For the precision cutting, we borrowed Hans Bielenstein's radial arm saw. Hans was particular about his saw, which he had owned for a long time, and we had to clear out a space in the garden shed to store it. He was dealing with cancer and was in and out of the hospital that summer. On one of his good days, he came to see how we were doing. I can still see him coming down the back steps with his cane, a big grin on his face, just happy to be out in the real world for a while. Hans died in early November after the deck was finished and the saw returned. There's a memorial bench for him in Confederation Park between a grove of spruce trees and the duck pond. I go there sometimes to remember him. I've never found a way to keep the boxes dry when they're full of earth, and they are slowly rotting from the inside. They still look good on the outside, but one day they will have to be rebuilt, either by myself or a new owner. A small price, I think, for all those years of flowers.
Thank you, Carl. Reading and hearing Carl's poems reminded me of the lyrics of a song by UU, Unitarian Universalist composer Joyce Poley, that says in part, "Deep in our hearts lies feelings and plans, waiting to dance into life through our hands. The poets write sonnets, the artists paint dreams, and all of our world becomes more than it seems. And we touch one another in our own special way, in a letter of love or a sculpture of clay, in the squeeze of a hand or a gentle caress. And the more we reach out, the more we are blessed." Carl, I feel blessed by your words. They offer another gift of poetry, the ability to have a glimpse of life experience, perhaps to come. For me, it was noticing the limits that aging offers and also the gifts. These I look forward to, the liberation from so many have-tos and embracing the whatever I want to. Poetry also gives us glimpses of what we may not be able to have the experience of or not wish to have the experience of, the chance to live vicariously. Poetry opens up our hearts and our spirits to experience that we might not have otherwise. I have found through this COVID time, as we have been doing Vesper services every Tuesday night, I'm searching for poetry to offer during those sessions. And it has become a spiritual practice. That, I think, is another one of the blessings of poems and poetry, that it can offer a spiritual focus, salve for our soul, an enrichment of who we are as human beings. I'm so grateful for the generosity this morning of so many poets, and we still have one to come. But now, I invite Pam to offer an invitation into our other kinds of generosity. Pam?
We'll gather the gifts today with the words slightly modified. The words of Kristen Collins, we give. We give to remind ourselves how many gifts we have to offer. We give to remember that we are part of something bigger than ourselves. We give because we believe in music and poetry and sacred space. We give with the faith that together we have enough.
I live by the Bow River and have for a long time. It seemed like when we first shut down, everything changed. Instead of people milling about there, it was kind of empty. And then I realized that all the animals started coming out, even beavers. At one time, there were these birds and even big beetles on the sidewalk, and they seemed to be thinking, "What are you doing here?" I thought, hey, wait a minute. So I had to write this poem, Whose Woods Are These? With apologies to Robert Frost, who he will have to hold your hands over your eyes, Robert. Whose woods are these? I do not know. Her house is in the cosmos, though. She will not see me dropping here to hide my face in all the years I've taken from the wind and trees, that voice that brought me to my knees. A grass wedding? A goose? A scooter? A black beetle in an overcoat? You don't belong. No, you don't belong. Get off the sidewalk. I'm speaking dandelion and milkweed with my toes, like a second language you could pick up walking with the rabbits. Cover your face. No, show your face. It's all right here in the white cliches, circles. Which way is the river running? The arrows will take you home. Do not open your mouth. Take a deep breath. That's a red squirrel with a white tail, not a vision of the virus. Oh, we used to take off all our clothes and lie exhausted in the new mown hay. Farmers in the late workday sun. Trusting, foolish, wind-burnt familia buried skin deep. And then stories escaping from our mouths into the air, like on celestial horses, we could ride for miles and miles before we sleep.
Let all the beauty we have known illuminate our hearts and minds. Rejoice in wonders daily shown, in faith and joy and love that binds. We celebrate with singing hearts the loveliness of sky and earth, the inspiration of the arts, the miracle of every birth, life's music and its poetry surround and bless us through our days. For these we sing in harmony, together giving thanks and praise.
And so as our time comes to a close, this sacred hour when we have been together, we've heard the voice of children, of youth, of young adults and elders. The poets this morning have offered to share printed copies of their works, and we'll make sure that those are posted on our website. Lorianne and Kathy both have published works, and you're invited to search them out, and I'll include their websites in the list of poems that we will post. I'd like to offer these closing words from one of my favorite poets, Denise Levertov. It's titled Making Peace, and I think speaks to the liberation and resistance that we have been talking about. Making peace. A voice from the dark called out, "The poets must give us imagination of peace to oust the intense, familiar imagination of disaster. Peace, not only the absence of war, but peace, like a poem, is not there ahead of itself, can't be imagined before it is made, can't be known except in the words of its making. Grammar of justice, syntax of mutual aid. A feeling towards it, dimly sensing a rhythm, is all we have until we begin to utter its metaphors, learning them as we speak. A line of peace might appear if we restructured the sentence of our lives, the sentence our lives are making, revoked its reaffirmation of profit and power, questioned our needs, allowed long pauses. A cadence of peace might balance its weight on a different fulcrum. Peace, a presence, an energy field more intense than war, might pulse then, stanza by stanza, into the world. Each act of living, one of its words, each word a vibration of light, facets from the forming crystal. What a gift and a blessing it has been to have poets with us, to share poetry, and to share this sacred time together. As it comes to an end, I extinguish the light of our chalice, knowing that we take its warmth, the illumination we may have found this morning, and the warmth of community with us, to carry in ourselves and share its light into the world. Let us now extinguish the chalice.
As ever, we have lots to talk about together this morning, and so we invite you to our virtual coffee hour. It's easy to get there. All you have to do is click on the link that has just appeared in the chat area of your Zoom screen. And now let's sing together our closing benediction with words and music by the Canadian songwriter Carolyn McDade. This is Spirit of Life.
Spirit of life, come unto me. Sing in my heart all the stirrings of compassion. Blow in the wind, rise in the sea.